The Mekong River originates in the Tibetan Plateau, winding its way through China, Myanmar, Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam. This vital waterway supports the lives and livelihoods of millions of people in Southeast Asia. For countries like Vietnam and Cambodia, the Mekong provides enormous economic value. However, China has relied on standing upstream, finding ways to control the river and building dams to disrupt the water flow of the remaining countries. The Mekong Delta produces half of Vietnam's rice, 70% of its aquaculture, and one-third of its GDP. The river enables Vietnam to be one of Asia's top producers and exporters of rice, with the Mekong Delta generating as much as 24 million metric tons per year. The nutrient-rich waters also drive a fishing and aquaculture industry worth up to $2.7 billion annually. Similarly, the Mekong sustains Cambodia, providing 86% of the country's territory for agriculture. Cambodia's fisheries, centered around the Tonle Sap Lake, which is fed by Mekong waters, supply almost 80% of the population's protein intake. But the Mekong River has also become a source of leverage for upstream China. Over the past 3 decades, China has constructed 11 massive hydropower dams on the upper Mekong within its borders. These dams can hold a staggering amount of water, up to 15 million Olympic-sized swimming pools, according to some estimates. China has the ability to regulate downstream flows to Southeast Asian nations and has exercised this power to devastating effect. In recent years, the restricted flow from China's dams has caused severe drought and unpredictable flooding in Vietnam and Thailand. China has also been accused of hoarding valuable water level data that could help the Mekong nations prepare for and mitigate natural disasters. By controlling the Mekong's taps, China exerts major influence over its southern neighbors. The downstream countries depend deeply on the river for survival, but fear openly criticizing China's dam operations. China has become the dominant trading partner and military force in Southeast Asia, and countries like Vietnam and Cambodia rely heavily on Chinese investment and infrastructure loans. The Mekong has thus become not only a vital artery, but also a source of both prosperity and peril. China's dam building and willingness to leverage the river have led to accusations of water wars. With new dams planned on the Mekong and other major waterways like the Brahmaputra, the region faces an uncertain future in which water and hydropower are wielded as weapons between nations. Cooperation on shared rivers will be essential to protect millions who rely on these waters to survive. China's control over the Mekong strengthens through Laos and Cambodia dams. The Mekong River provides vital resources to countries across Southeast Asia, but as China continues to construct dams on the upper reaches of the Mekong, it is gaining more control over the downstream nations that rely on the river. 2 of the countries most impacted are Laos and Cambodia. Laos, with its mountainous terrain, has pursued dreams of becoming the battery of Southeast Asia by damming the Mekong and selling hydropower electricity to its neighbors. In the 2000s, China took advantage by funding new dams in Laos through its Belt and Road Initiative, BRI. Laos now has 79 dams completed or planned on the Mekong and its tributaries. While most of the electricity goes to Thailand and Vietnam, China provides the expertise, construction, and financing. Over $2.8 billion in Chinese investment has flowed into hydropower in Laos. Laos exports electricity worth $2 billion annually, making it dependent on dams and indebted to China. Downstream in Cambodia, China has constructed its largest overseas dam, the $781 million Lower Xi'an 2 hydropower project. The Chinese-built dam flooded over 400 square kilometers of forests and farmland, displacing thousands of villagers. Cambodia now relies on the dam for electricity, but at an environmental and social cost. Through BRI projects like these, China exerts control over the Mekong's downstream nations by making them reliant on dams for power and indebted through Chinese loans. Laos and Cambodia also fear criticizing their giant neighbor, who has become essential to their economies. With its dams and infrastructure investments, China has entrenched its dominant position over Southeast Asia's critical waterway. Cooperation rather than domination is essential if the fragile Mekong ecology and downstream livelihoods are to be protected. But for now, China tightens its grip on the region through dams and debt diplomacy. Mekong dams devastate downstream communities in Laos and Cambodia. As China exerts control over the Mekong River through dam building in downstream nations, the environmental and human costs are immense. Laos and Cambodia have embraced dreams of becoming the battery of Southeast Asia by damming the Mekong's flow. But hydropower comes at a price for rural communities. In Laos, villages have been uprooted by dam construction, especially China's $2.8 billion investment in the Pakbeng hydropower project. While most electricity flows to Thailand and Vietnam, Laos is left with environmental destruction. River ecology is disrupted, and fish populations plummet along with villagers' main source of income and protein. In Cambodia's Stung Treng province, the lower Xi'an II Dam drowned 400 square kilometers of vital forests and farmland. Over 5,000 residents were displaced by the dam, which is majority Chinese-owned. Locals lament the loss of their ancestral lands and access to the natural resources that once sustained them. Many received no compensation and struggle to feed their families. Downstream from the dams, the normally rich sediment flow that fertilizes agriculture has declined. Rice yields and fruit harvests have dropped dramatically. Fish catches are down by 50 to 80% in affected communities, and yet no comprehensive studies of these negative impacts were conducted prior to approval. While hydropower dams bring theoretical benefits like renewable electricity and flood control, the reality for rural Mekong communities is food insecurity, loss of livelihoods, and inadequate resettlement support. Without true consultation, compensation, and mitigation measures, dams will continue to destroy lives along with the environment. China and its partner governments in Laos and Cambodia must work cooperatively with citizens to find solutions. China's upcoming dam plans spark water war fears. China is planning an extensive build-out of new dams on major cross-border rivers in the coming years. These proposed mega-dams have downstream nations deeply concerned about water security and China's potential use of water as a weapon. On the Mekong River, China has already constructed 11 dams on the upper reaches within its territory. Now China aims to build 8 more hydropower dams on the downstream sections of the Mekong that flows through Southeast Asia before emptying into the South China Sea. These new dams could exacerbate the droughts and irregular flow patterns that Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, and Laos have already experienced as a result of China's manipulation of the headwaters. Even more alarming to downstream nations is China's plan for a massive 60,000 megawatt hydropower project on the Brahmaputra River, known locally as the Yarlung Changpo. The location in Tibet gives China total control over the Brahmaputra's flow. This super dam will divert water from India and Bangladesh, who rely heavily on the river for agriculture, fishing, and transportation. China has already proven its willingness to withhold vital data and manipulate the Brahmaputra's flows. When relations soured with India in 2017, China provided no hydrological data for months, worsening floods in India's Arunachal Pradesh region. The megadam could potentially allow China to create water shortages or floods on demand. Its enormity dwarfs even China's Three Gorges Dam. These upcoming projects expand China's ability to wield its water resources as political and economic leverage over regional rivals. Water wars were once considered unimaginable, but China's actions have made them an imminent possibility. Without transparency and cooperation around shared waterways like the Mekong and Brahmaputra, the water security of all of Asia could be held hostage. India, alarmed by China's megadam plans for Brahmaputra. A new megadam planned by China on the Brahmaputra River has raised alarms in India over water security. The 60,000 megawatt hydropower project would divert water from the Brahmaputra, called Yarlung Tsangpo in China, before it flows into northeastern India. India fears the project could allow China to manipulate the river's flows as a form of retaliation or coercion. In 2017, China withheld critical water level data for months after a border standoff with India. The result was devastating floods in India's Arunachal Pradesh region. The Mammoth Dam would give China total control over the Brahmaputra's flows entering India, escalating an already tense geopolitical relationship. Sudden water shortages or floods could cripple agriculture and food security in India's northeast. Millions rely on the Brahmaputra for irrigation, drinking water, and hydropower. China has tried to allay concerns by claiming the dam will provide benefits such as electricity, flood control, and water supplies. But India argues China has no right to divert waters that supply downstream nations. Lacking other options, India is accelerating its own dam-building programs on tributaries of the Brahmaputra. But India cannot match the scale of Chinese hydro-engineering. For now, India can only exert diplomatic pressure and employ remote sensing technologies to track China's maneuvers over the contested river. Unless China engages in transparent data sharing and impact assessments, the Brahmaputra could become a dangerous flashpoint. Instead of using water as a weapon, India hopes China will cooperate to develop the river sustainably and equitably. But China's unilateral dam activities suggest it is more interested in leverage than cooperation on shared waterways. Downstream Mekong nations, constrained by China's power. China wields immense influence over downstream nations along the Mekong River due to both economic dominance and debt diplomacy. Countries like Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, and Laos rely heavily on trade with China, their largest trading partner. Chinese investment under the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, has built infrastructure throughout the region and made Mekong governments financially indebted to Beijing. The Mekong flows through some of the poorest countries in Southeast Asia before reaching more developed economies like Thailand and Vietnam. Decades of development aid from China has made them unable or unwilling to criticize China's control over the crucial waterway. A majority of Laos' public debt, which the IMF estimates 122% of GDP this year, is owed to Beijing due to infrastructure deals under China's Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI. China is also the unquestioned military superpower in the region. With the largest standing army in Asia, China exerts hard power and influence over its smaller neighbors. Countries like Cambodia have even supported Beijing's positions in regional disputes as a show of loyalty. While downstream nations suffer the environmental consequences of China's Mekong dam building, they have little recourse. Their economies depend on Chinese trade and investment. China could cripple them with sanctions or debt calls if they oppose its interests. And China's military might preclude any thought of confrontation. The result is downstream acquiescence to China's new water hegemony over the Mekong. China skirts Mekong Commission while asserting control. The Mekong River Commission, MRC, was formed in 1995 by downstream nations Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, and Vietnam. The purpose was to jointly manage and develop the river in a transparent and sustainable manner. However, as the country where the Mekong originates, China has negotiated a different role. By only participating as a dialogue partner, China avoids the legal obligations and regulations that come with MRC membership. This allows China to act unilaterally in building dams and other projects that impact the river's flows. In recent years, China has been accused of manipulating the Mekong's water to the detriment of downstream nations. But the MRC has no authority over China's actions or ability to hold it accountable. China also restricts the flow of data that could help MRC members mitigate floods and droughts. Frustrated by criticism over the Mekong, China initiated a new group called the Lancang-Mekong Cooperation Mechanism in 2016. This organization, which includes China as well as MRC members, provides a platform more aligned with China's interests. Projects are often contracted to Chinese companies, By creating an alternative forum, China has undermined the MRC's mandate for sustainable development, and by controlling the Lancang mechanism, China shapes the rules in its own favor. This allows China to continue asserting dominance over the Mekong through dam building and unilateral operations that threaten the river ecology. True cooperation will require empowering the Mekong River Commission and bringing China into the fold as a full member. Until then, China will remain unaccountable and in control over Southeast Asia's lifeline. China dams portend future of water wars in Asia. As China continues to build megadams on major rivers like the Mekong and Brahmaputra, the downstream nations are increasingly alarmed. By controlling the tap, China can manipulate the flows entering its neighbors, creating droughts or floods. Yet the affected countries feel constrained to openly criticize China due to economic dependence and debt obligations. This is becoming a pattern replicated across Asia. On the Mekong, China's dams have already caused irregular flow patterns that devastated Vietnamese agriculture and Cambodian fisheries. China is also plotting new dams on the Brahmaputra that could deprive India of critical water supplies. Similar issues face Kazakhstan and other Central Asian states reliant on rivers originating in China. Using dams to leverage water supplies may bring short-term strategic advantages for China, but weaponizing shared rivers ultimately benefits no one if it ruins regional stability and causes humanitarian crises. To avoid future water wars, China must engage its neighbors in equitable and sustainable management of transboundary rivers. That will require transparency, data sharing, and truly cooperative institutions like the Mekong River Commission. But there is little hope of China relinquishing control when it holds all the hydrological leverage. For downstream nations, the prospects of water security in Asia have never looked more ominous.